got folks that are going to have to that. So, yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Until the fire marshal shows up.
Yeah.
Oh boy, yeah, what's the count on the room? 91.
If I can have everyone's attention, if I can have everyone's attention, I want to be mindful of everyone's time. Hi, my name is Jonathan Evans. I'm the city manager here in the city of Riviera Beach. Welcome to our town hall concerning managed mooring fields. I would like to thank you all for taking the time to be here to get information concerning the managed mooring fields and then to ask some of the subject matter experts. Team of experts that will have a presentation. I ask that you hold your comments and questions till the end of all the presentations. We have citizen comment cards. If you would like to comment, please fill out a citizen comment card. I will be closing citizen comments as it relates to the submission of a card around 6:15 to allow for an opportunity for us to get through most of the citizen comment cards. Our intent is to be here till approximately 8:30. We are going to allot some time for Q&As. I don't think the presentations are going to go that long, but there is adequate time for you to ask any questions. We ask that you be respectful, be mindful of the nature of your tone, the questions. This is a collegial discussion that we want to make sure you leave here with answers to your questions. And so when you do have, as part of your public comment, if you do have specific questions, please make sure that you address those questions first so staff can write those down, and then we can go ahead and get into the comment part of your discussion. Please note our intent is to answer every question we possibly can in the time that we have. If there are questions we cannot get to, we'll make sure that there's a follow-up as a result of your participation in this meeting. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn the introductions of our panelists so they can introduce who they are, and then we can get into the presentation.
Good evening. Randy Sherman, Director of Finance and Administrative Services.
Good evening, Ron Schultz, a principal of the Edgewater Group in Pompano.
Hello, Jade Bennett, environmental engineer at Edgewater Resource Group.
John Sprague, Jade Sprague Consulting, the consultant for this project.
All right. That is the folks that you will be hearing from this evening. Also, if there are any seats that are available next to you, if everyone can shift and make sure there's no empty seats because we have people that are still coming into this meeting. We're going to try what we can do to we've got some seats available over here. Okay, we've got one here. Without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and turn the introductory presentation over to Mr. Randy Sherman, our Director of Finance and Administrative Services. And also, as a housekeeping item, please make sure that you silence your cell phones and put them on vibrate. The restrooms are right here to my right. If you exit the door, the restrooms are right here. With that being said, Mr. Sherman.
Thank you, Mr. Evans. And I do truly want to express my appreciation for you all being here tonight. I am going to be real quick. I'm just going to walk you through the process that we have so far. It literally is about 8 bullets, so it won't take all that long. So going through, and I'll put that all up there, just want to make sure everybody understands what a mooring field is. In essence, it's a parking lot on water. You know, it's a parking lot for boats. You know, we have parking lots in the city. We manage those. We give you a space to park. We may or may not charge for that parking. We do, maintenance on that, and we make sure everybody follows the rules and parks where they're supposed to be, and it provides order to the system. I do want to point out that this is a managed mooring field. We do have to have a plan to manage, and Mr. Sprague will go over that in the process of his presentation. So going through the timeline, this project actually goes back over 4 years ago. December 19, 2018 was the first presentation that we made to the City Council on the mooring field project. On April 17th, having received the thumbs up back in December, we actually brought forward an application for a FIND grant. That's the Florida Inland Navigation District. They do, it's on your tax bills. They collect money from all of us, and they do provide grants, and they provided a grant to the city to look into the managed mooring fields. The next presentation we made, on November 25th, 2019 is when we actually got the grant agreement signed, and it was a $75,000 grant with matching funds. On August 29th, 2020, we made a full-blown presentation to the board during one of the budget presentation meetings about Phase 4 of the marine expansion. And this Phase 4 not only includes additional docks, but it did include discussion on the mooring fields at that time. And then on September 16th, the council passed the 5-year CIP plan, which did include Phase 4, including the mooring fields in that resolution. So that was the first really appropriation regulation coming from the council. Following year, again, there were no presentations between September 2020 and September 2021, but the project was reappropriated as part of the 21 capital plan. Then on November 3rd, we did make another mooring field presentation to the council, giving them an update. Again, it had been over a year since we made that presentation. That was then followed by an amendment to the project agreement, which all that really did was extend the time period that we had, because as you can see, we're already 3.5 years into that project agreement. Then on May 18th, again, we came back to the council as part of our CIP, and we had applied for a second FIND grant. This FIND grant application was approved by the City Council, and this FIND grant was actually for the installation and the construction of the mooring fields. And I will tell you, FIND did not approve that grant request. And again, I'll let the panelists address their thought on that. And then on September 22nd, again, the project was in the CIP and again was reapproved by the City Council. So that brings us to where we are today. And again, I'll introduce the next speaker is John Sprague. John, are you going to, I know you've had some surgery.
Yeah,
You're going to stay down there?
Can you hear me?
Okay.
I'm going to have to apologize. I had back-to-back eye surgery. I'm having problems seeing, which doesn't help me any. So am I going to do the slides or is somebody else going to do the?
Oh, you got one? Okay.
Yeah, I got one here too. All right, so when you look at the stars and the location of the inlet, those two stars are the locations of both mooring fields. We're calling that south and central. That's an aerial view of the central, which is off the city of Riviera Beach. The channel is in the lower part where you see that larger white boat. Those white spots are various boats that are anchored off the city limits presently. That's the marina in the upper left-hand corner. And then you're looking at Rybovich, which is now Safe Harbor, Viking, and Martin Marietta on the shoreline. That's another view showing anchored out boats, our mainland going all the way up to the bridge. Blue Heron Marina at the very top next to the Blue Heron Bridge. And you'll notice light areas and dark areas. The dark areas that are kind of in between the boats, those are the dredged channels that have access into the commercial facilities. That is the intended location for the south mooring field. You're looking south from the turning basin down the ICW. I'm not sure how many was counted in that picture at one time. We did get 154 boats that were anchored out there, and as little as 108 when I first started looking at the mooring fields. These are shots of seagrass chain damage done by anchored out vessels. The one on the left is the normal circle as the chain swings around on the bottom, and the green around it is algae and seagrass. It's another closer up shot showing the keel of a sailboat up above and the total destruction to the bottom of seagrass wiped out by the chains. There's another shot of the same thing. So basically, when you have any boat anchored on chain for any length of time, you're going to get some damage. The good thing about this is that when we move into helices, there's zero, which you'll see in. That's another shot on the air, just showing mainland, and there's some more seagrass damage shots from different views. Additional ones. The one you see in the upper left is like 3 anchors. That is 2 boats sunk on the bottom. And then you see the scour that was done from the current on the incoming tide. That's your helice, which is, we have brought the actual helice here. I'm sorry, helice, which is to my right. That's a photograph of one of them. There are some various different designs. And a helice screws into the bottom. It literally disturbs maybe 8 to 12 inches of the bottom when it screws in. And that's the head of the helice coming out, and as you notice, seagrass grows right up to it. So the main thing that it does, and we all anchor, you know, I've anchored my entire life. Most places you have to anchor, unfortunately. Unfortunately also as well, when you do anchor, in most cases, you do not know whether you're anchoring on seagrass or whether you're on bottom that doesn't have anything. It depends upon water quality. All right, now this is where I'm starting having trouble. Catch up. All right, so the summary of benefits. Environmentally, you eliminate anchor and chain damage to seagrass. What you try and do is develop mooring fields in areas where we have large numbers of boats that anchor out. We have an international port of entry here. We've got the Palm Beach Inlet, which is one of the few deep water inlets in the state of Florida. We're also right across from the Bahamas. So everybody likes boating. I grew up in Riviera Beach. I was in the marina business where Viking is now, and I sold out them to 1999. So I was one of those coming in and out of the inlet. I anchored here, and we had a lot of fun around Peanut Island. We did what boaters do, and people that enjoy the water. So water quality, the second thing is, where does the sewage go? We advertise in Palm Beach County that we're the best of everything, and we do not have a pump-out boat. So when you look at from Jupiter all the way down to the end of Boca Raton, I can tell you the majority of boats anchored out are not getting sewage. And the reason being is that most of them, a lot of them put buoys that you can let go of the buoy, but unfortunately in the state of Florida, in order to put a mooring down, you need a permit. And according to DEP, they're telling me there's only 1 permit issued for a mooring field in Palm Beach County, period. And that's because it takes an activity to install the permit, and it's on their state lands. But water quality by sewage and garbage. So the collection of the mooring field. We intend to have a pump out boat. Also, when we design the new marina, every single slip in that marina has got pump out right where the boat is in the slip. And that way they are not inconvenienced by having to go to the fuel dock or whatever. And we know at any time they can pump out. And we also have other standpipes for sewage in the marginal areas along the fuel dock and all on the outside where the public can pump out if they need to pump out. It also gives us a pump out backup for the mooring field, should our mooring field boat need maintenance, etc. Storm protection. All right, so anchored out boats, those of you that own waterfront homes that have been through hurricanes in the state of Florida know that most of them are going to wind up on your docks, on your seawalls, and stuck or sunk down below. And when you turned around for help, help was, sorry, sir, it's on private property, you're going to have to pay to take the boat off. Moored out boats, we generally don't know who they're, when they're anchored out, we don't know who owns them. We know very little information, so you as homeowners that wind up with the damage during hurricanes, you're kind of left to your own because we have zero information on them. We're going to design this mooring field for vessels up to 60 feet, even though the majority boats are going to be probably in the 40, 45-foot range. There's going to be a few more. And that is designed up to a Cat 3 loading mooring. That's an example, as I said, of the system up there. But the engineers will figure out exactly how many helice sections they need to put down in the bottom. And today we have the gentleman from the company that is the expert in mooring fields and installing them, which will bring him up when I get to more with moorings. So again, back to hurricanes that we had in the past, especially 204, 205. Almost every boat that was anchored out wound up on somebody's property. They were all over Peanut Island. They were on everywhere, as well as a great number of waterfront properties that wound up with them. Just the little storm that we just had, we the city, I'll get into that later, but government has spent a great deal of money on a continuous basis removing vessels that either sink within the corporate limits of Riviera Beach and or wind up coming into the dock, the marina, Viking next door to us. We seem to be a magnet to draw them. So what's the mooring field going to look like? This is the one that is presently in for permitting off of the mainland. Now when you look at that, when you look at the black numbers, you're going to see that those are just about the same size as the boats. So when you look at that, just figure that the black spots, that's the overall size of the boat. The nice thing is, when nobody's renting a mooring and they're not there, the only thing you're looking at is a 20-inch diameter ball that's sitting out there. The next picture is that we looked at somehow these pictures are not in sequence. You look at the circles. What we tried to do is make sure all the moorings, the nearest mooring is a minimum of 500 feet from all the docks on shore. At the same time, what we're trying to do with the setbacks of the marinas and the setbacks of the mooring field that's in statute is to basically prevent any anchoring in the areas between the ICW channel, and that's south. The ICW, which is on the upper part, on the south mooring field, there's a Palm Beach channel, and the mooring field's going in between that. But regardless, is to try and make the setbacks so the anchoring can occur in between. And what we do is protect the mainland, the property on both West Palm, Palm Beach, and the city of Riviera Beach, mainland down. this. That's not up to me.
At this time, we're going to hold off on any additional public comment cards. We have one last presentation that's going to be provided for, and then we're going to open it up for public comments and answer as many questions as we possibly can. So at this time, we're going to go ahead and turn it over to the next group of presenters.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, John had some additional stuff. I'm sorry.
So I'm going to go through some general information which I prepared, which hopefully is going to answer a lot of your questions that we haven't covered with the maps. So just to give you a little background, 2019, we had 36,351 registered votes in Palm Beach County. Yeah, economic impact in Palm Beach County was $2.1 billion to our economy by voting in Palm Beach County. Along the waterfront in Riviera Beach, we've got 5 wet slip marinas, 1 dry stack, and 3 boat yards. Also inland, we have a number of marine businesses. As a matter of fact, we have the majority that are in Palm Beach County, which give a lot of economic to our city as well as the county. And they also back up the boat yards and all the boats and marinas and whatever. And they surprise a whole host from canvas to engine work and whatever. And they're scattered in the western part of our city. That creates a bunch of jobs, which is important. As I said earlier, Lake Worth Inlet is an international port of entry. We've got the United States Coast Guard, U.S. Customs and Immigration is located here. So we've got boats that come all the way from Europe, they come from Virgin Islands, they come from Maine and Canada, they come around the Gulf, and they can come across St. Lucie and come down and come out Palm Beach Inlet because they're going to Bahamas, depending upon which way. And then also all the people that live up in New York and Maine and whatever where it freezes, they make a decision, do I winterize my vessel or do I bring it south to Florida? We're actually running into a problem of the inability to build additional slips. And what's that done is it affects the affordability. Most people, you know, whether how old it is or whatever, can't afford to pay $1,300, $1,500, $2,000 a month dockage. And that may seem a lot, but if you ever saw the bill of what it costs to build a marina today that's going to survive hurricanes, that's why you have to charge that. Because the cost is so much to build it and maintain it. So that makes vessels, we're a destination. And every year there's a bunch of boats that come down the ICW, and they not only spend money here, they spend it in every state and municipality on the way down, and they spend it on the way back. Fortunately, because we're a destination, they spend it for a longer period of time, not just passing through. And that economics is a big thing to Florida, and it's a big thing to Palm Beach County, and South Florida is the mecca of the marine industry in the state of Florida. There's upwards of 250 boats on anchor in Palm Beach County at any one given moment. And that's an average that comes and goes, depends on time of year, a lot of depends, but it's generally around 250 boats by counts. Those are stored vessels, because there again, a lot of people can't afford to spend $1,500 a month to store their boat. And there is no alternative, which is why we look at mooring fields. The cost of removing in the last 10 years, 105 vessels, this is in Riviera Beach, 105 vessels have been removed at a cost of $689,813.50 paid for by your governments. Not just Riviera. Bind is very good about helping to fund. FWC's got money. I mean, they budget every year, but nevertheless, it's not a small figure. Primarily, they're out there because they have no reasonable cost alternative. And they either don't vote. We're having the same problem with trying to build additional ramps. Where do you build them at? Environmental damage to seagrass. So when we put in 143 moorings, which is what's proposed, all the area that we put the moorings, we have seagrass. Now, why would we want to put anything over seagrass? Because there's no damage from the mooring field. Most of those big white spots you see are upwards of 2,500 feet of damage, totally devoid of seagrass, and that's on every one of those vessels. You know, it's easy to say, we'll just stop that or whatever, but that's what the city is looking at trying to do, is to give an affordable alternative for vessels to go and not do any environmental damage. And cover the cost and hopefully make a little bit of money on the top. As I said, we've got the helice. If we run into rock, there's a different kind of fastening, which we can do. All right, I'm going to stop for a minute. Can I, where's, what's his name? No, the mooring field guy.
Oh.
Come on, get up here. I went brain dead. Not the first time. This gentleman, I'm going to self-explain.
Oh, you want me to answer?
Yeah.
Well, just
Tell them who you are, what you do, where you've done it.
There's some chairs up here.
Yeah, David Foster with American Underwater Contractors out of Jupiter, Florida. And this is the, David Foster? So this is the typical system that has been engineered. It's in Florida. There's thousands of these that have been in the water since Hurricane Andrew in 1992. And the gentleman that actually invented this, it's an elastic system. So with the chain that providing all that dampening to take this shock lines off the boats, has all been incorporated into either polyester or Dyneema. And that line stretches and it's like a big shock absorber. So it stretches and compresses. It dampens that load. So it's been real successful in the hurricanes. But John had asked me to bring it to show the typical system that the engineers end up with. This is probably the most common one that we've seen. There's probably a little over 600 of these in Miami. And so they've been really time tested since 92, really since Hurricane Andrew. And the improvements keep happening. You guys know your thimbles that always rot out after 4 or 5 years. They're now made out of HDPE plastics that are stronger than the steel. And they don't have any wear point or any corrosion point. So they've gotten to be real cost effective. But, yeah, John, if there's any specific questions.
Yeah, tell the audience some of the mooring fields you've put in, your experience level.
Well, the helical anchor's here because it's mostly sand where all these boats are anchored. So we drive these triple plate helical anchors in. The shafts, I don't know if you can see them back there. They're 1 3/4 solid steel galvanized shafts. They're really heavy, but they're 100,000 pounds of tensile strength. So all that sticks out of the seafloor is this top end of it with a mooring head that attaches to the shackle. So everything after that floats off the seafloor. So there's no drag or damage or wear or tear. But we drive those anchors in here, typically, probably 14 to 20 something feet. And we're looking for a torque. And once these things reach a certain torque, like screwing a screw into any mechanical thing, it has a holding capacity. And then we pull test that to proof test it. So it can be proof tested to basically anything they want. We do it for super yachts where we put in 2 anchors about 5 feet apart. They have a hard beam that goes between them, and they have a central, connection point that goes to just a heavier system that's just like this. But they are very resilient. They're designed basically the cleats on the boat are supposed to be the weak link. So everything in the system up to the deck of the boat, the cleats are it. 95+% of the failures after hurricanes where the boats are on mooring systems ending up in the bushes, according to Boat US's study, it's always the rope going to the deck of the boat. It's what the boat owner supplies a rope that goes from the pennant. So this floats up close to the top so it doesn't tangle on the bottom. So you provide a rope that passes through here back to your vessel. And if that rope's made out of Dyneema, you're there. It'll chew a hole in your boat typically. I've seen them actually chew into fiberglass and not chafe it in half. But all the failures were ropes going to the vessel on the deck. You can see them hanging on these mooring systems. They'll be looped here and you'll see them chewed off. I've actually seen vessels, a couple of them in Key West after hurricane, that were actually sunk on the mooring, and what happened, nothing turned loose. The owner did a great job of chafe gear, correct ropes, and the storm was so strong it literally ripped the hatches off the deck and just sunk the boat. what his boat was sitting there in the mooring, which was kind of a weird one. But if you have any specific engineering questions, I'll be glad to answer them. Yeah, inside of this system, this one has a 5-foot section, and it actually stretches and compresses. So it's wound around thousands of strands of connected. That's what's right, they run from about 28
So-
to about 48, or how fancy they want to get, how big the boat is.
If we can hold the questions to the end so we can get through the presentation, so, yeah.
All right, John, you ready?
Yep, thank you.
Ron?
Yeah, the next thing that we're gonna, aside from the pump-out boat, which we're gonna have, we're planning on putting a shuttle boat in. Now, why would we want a shuttle boat? Because at times, we're gonna have dinghy clog in the marina. So if we can avoid most of the time, probably 5 days a week, may not run 7, but to offset as much dinghy use as we can with the shuttle boat. And that can also double as a pump-out boat. I'm looking at that as an alternative of having the ability to pump out. So if our regular pump-out boat goes down, we can use the shuttle boat temporarily as a pump-out boat. Mooring fields will have a set of regulations just like a marina. You know, there's a lot of things you can't do. We don't like to see laundry hanging, halyard noise. I'm quite sure everybody in the waterfront has heard halyards slapping the mast. That's a no-no. And absolutely, we're going to pick up their garbage too. We're going to require a certain type of bag and whatever, but we can pick that up when we pump them out with a sewer boat. And we also have a pennant system. It's a special pennant, color and size. It's like a sailfish, except it's orange. And that tells the pump-out boat, even if you're not on it, because you'll sign an agreement first that we can pump out your boat when you're not there. And when you fly the pennant, we can pump it out that day, whether or not you're aboard or not. There's protocols, as I said, on the mooring field. We expect to have online, so a cruising boat can, ahead of time, reserve the buoy. He can look at what moorings are open and which are rented. And so we can kind of pick his mooring. But the harbor master will make the final decision as to where the boat will last when you check in the following day if you come in after hours.
John, we'll take questions at the end.
Current process status, we've applied for permits with 4 NDP. We just answered our first RAI at length, which I think we've complied with all the questions that DEP asked in the original application. We held off in answering until they sent us an RAI. And what that is a request for additional information, because that told us the questions and the information we need to give them in order to get our permit, rather than apply for the permit, then they have a few more things and it comes back, and then you start this yo-yo, which never seems to stop in the permit process. And that's it to move forward.
Walter, can you put up the last presentation? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Again, my name is Ron Schultz. I'm a professional engineer. Been in the marina business since 1979. Worked on well over 400 projects all over the country. We have an office in Pompano. And with me tonight is Jade Bennett. She's our environmental engineer, responsible for all our permitting, regulations, seagrass surveys, and things like that. So we were asked to give an additional independent opinion of the plans that are currently being considered and underway. And so that's what this outline will be. My agenda here is 6 quick items. I'm going to move right through because I know it's already probably been pretty long for you. Our introduction, the purpose of the mooring field, the history, some of which you've already heard earlier, mooring field approval process, the environmental considerations, and then also the benefits. So again, Edgewater Group, we do projects all over the world, and We're very excited to be part of this and give our knowledge and experience in Riviera Beach. So again, what's the purpose of a mooring field? Well, it's a legally defined area of a body of water where a boat can be secured. As was said earlier, it's a parking lot for boats. But why would you do it? Why do you need it? Why not just leave the boats out there the way they are? I think that's the question at hand. And so there are some benefits, and they all have to do with environmental concerns and issues. They can reduce pollution, reduce the illegal discharge of waste, protect the seafloor from anchor dragging, which is the protected seagrass, which we have out here for the manatees. We have a process and some funding available for derelict boat removal and reduce the abandoned boats that are out there besides the derelict ones. Also increases safety. We add security, law enforcement, and reduces that swing of the anchors. Mooring field you can see to the right is in Coconut Grove in Biscayne Bay in the sea area there. Again, I'm going to go very quickly through here, but this has been considered and approved by the City of Riviera Beach for about a little over 4 years, starting in 2018. More meetings in 2019 and approvals, 2020, 21. The FIND, or the Florida Inland Navigation District application, has been submitted a couple of times. I think it's pending at this time. And the current approval process, the city has approved the plan, but there are other considerations underway. The Florida Department of Environmental Protection, FDEP, has a public notice pending. I think as Mr. Sprague indicated, there's some requests for information going on there. And the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers will also have a public notice. That's forthcoming. So what are the environmental considerations of a mooring field versus an unmanaged, unrestricted boat anchor network? Again, the considerations are water quality, safety, navigation, environmental concerns, bathymetry surveys to keep boats where they should be so they're not damaging the bottoms, in-water navigational signs, obviously manatee protection and marine wildlife protection. A big item is discharge of waste, and a field is also designed to handle tropical storms, hurricanes, and have a management plan. So I think you've already seen a little bit of this earlier, but these are the sunken vessels that are taken right off here in the central field discussed earlier, and you can see where the boats have damaged the seagrass below. Additional environmental damage, there's a 40-foot diameter circle that's right next to a 45-foot boat, and then several of the other ones here in the south field area. This is a view from East 25th Street of the existing boats that are out there. This was taken back in January, and a mooring field will have a similar view. We're not going to disrupt that view. So what happens if we don't do anything and just have a no-action alternative? Well, what's going to happen is we're going to continue to have the seagrass damage from the anchors and chains that are dragging around. That's a significant number, and we'll talk about that at the end of the presentation. Secondly is the unmanaged wastewater pollution discharge damage. Now, this is an extreme photo of that ship in the middle, but he's dumping sewer out there in the ocean. And this is going on with boats that are in an unmanaged scenario where they don't know where the pump out is. There's no pump out boat, and we know that happens all the time. Thirdly is the abandoned or derelict vessels continue to accumulate. And I think as John indicated, there was 100-some vessels and over $500,000 of removal costs to do that. In a managed field, you wouldn't allow the derelict vessels to occur in the first place. So again, what's a professionally designed and managed mooring field look like? I think we talked about it earlier here by the gentleman from the produces this product. It sets boat density and locations. It significantly reduces seagrass impacts. You can see the healthy seagrass and then the damaged seagrass taken from actual underwater photos that are in this location. As we discussed earlier, there's 2 mooring fields identified, north-south, or actually the north is called Central, And then the mooring buoys with helical anchor pile, it could be a C-flex type road, which is similar to what we've got here, but it's a bungee cord, call it, that's not allowing something to drag on the bottom and destroy that seagrass. So the proposed north field has 43 vessels, moorings for 30 to 40-foot vessels. Everything's offset 500 feet. We agree with that dimensional setback. That's a really good setback. We discussed this plan a little bit earlier. And the field to the south has 100 moorings, with it also with 500-foot setbacks from existing docks and structures, shown like that. Picture to the right are the existing unmanaged vessels that are causing damage to the seagrass, potentially discharging sewage, and so forth. So there was some discussion of a north field, north of the bridge at Phil Foster Park, but if we take the 500-foot setback dimensions, we really don't end up with much of a mooring field there, so that project for now is taken off the table. It was withdrawn in 2020. So what are the benefits of a professionally managed field again? Less environmental damage, no waste dumping. The city would provide a pump-out boat. That's a picture of one in the bottom left there. We're working up in Sanford, Florida, and they have a pump-out boat with a regular schedule. They come there on a call basis or on a Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, pump your boat out, take the sewage off, and so forth. Less seagrass, seafloor damage, we've talked about that. It would be managed by the city. The removal and elimination of the derelict boats and the sunken boats would be taken care of by the city. There would be minor revenue for the city. This is not a moneymaker, but it's more environmental protection for the bottomlands. Increased safety due to the organized plan. Again, no boats dragging anchors. It's also inexpensive and low maintenance, and it's storm-proof. It can be designed up to Category 3 or 4 hurricane standards. So we also were asked to take a look at what other systems are out there, and this is not being proposed, but there are offshore star docks that can be done to increase capacity, have light penetrating docks and so forth. This is an example of a project we worked on up in Chicago of star docks, and that's not being considered right now, but it's an interesting concept where you can collect boats together and have these little communities of mooring fields. This is how the star docks would look, where you have 43 boats in the swing mooring field or 80 boats in 5 defined areas with the star docks. So the pros and cons, the primary pro is similar to the managed mooring field, reduces seafloor damage, is regulated by the city, boats are not dragging, and so forth. The cons, there is some maintenance in the docks. You would also have hurricane impacts similar to floating docks, so that needs to be thought about. I think in conclusion, this is probably the most important slide here. So if in the numbers in yellow is the north field has 43 boats and the south field has 100 boats. With the unregulated mooring, the damage to the seagrass, and I'm using 1,257 square feet of seagrass damage per boat. That's with a 30-foot boat. A larger boat, that number could double. I think Mr. Sprague indicated 2,500 square feet, so this is a very conservative analysis. But we're showing the damage at 1,257 square feet per boat, and the mooring field damage at about 3 square feet. But I think I would agree, as some of the pictures show, once the helical anchor is in place, the seagrass comes right up to it. So that's a conservative figure as well. The total impacts are 54,000 square feet with unregulated mooring in the north field, which is 1.25 acres. That's a lot. And the south field is almost 3 acres of damage. With the mooring field, the damages are 3 1,000ths and 1.01 acres. So that's a huge impact, and I know the seagrass is super important for the manatees, for all kinds of resources and so forth. So it's really something to think about. So with that, I think we're probably at the point to open it up for questions.
Again, thank you, everybody, for being so attentive as part of the presentation. Our city clerk, Ms. Tawana Smith, has the names of persons that completed a public comment card. She'll call your name, and then we will go ahead and speak for the time that's allotted. We will write down any questions that you have in your public comment and try to address those at the end. So we're setting aside 3 minutes per person, but obviously we want to try to get through all the questions as quickly as possible. So if we do have a situation where we have an opportunity at the end, we will provide for additional Q&As.
Could I beg your indulgence and have 2 quick questions as a...
No. I'm sorry. But also, I do want to, at this point, there is a lot of elected officials in the room, and I want to take the time to acknowledge our elected officials. I know the mayor was here. Our chairperson, Councilperson Miller Anderson, is here. Councilperson Julio Botel is here, and Councilperson Douglas Lawson is here as well. And I do want to communicate to folks in the room is that there are subsequent discussions and conversations that will occur in front of the policymakers. And so I heard a comment that folks were saying, well, this conceivably is a done deal. I don't want folks to think that. The information that is provided and the concerns that are provided as a result of this discussion will be shared with the policymakers, and they will take that into consideration as they move through subsequent phases. The intent behind this meeting is to hear from the community, what do you like, what do you don't like, and what are some solutions that you may have in order to help us resolve the issue. I think we can all agree that we don't want to be the community that says we're not going to do anything as a result, and we're just going to deal with the damage that we know is occurring. So let's look at this from a solution-based perspective. Let's come with some ideas. I would assure you that everyone, we will try to answer all your questions, and if we can't answer your questions in this format, we have no problem sitting down with you and communicating with you concerning any questions that you may have. So I'm going to turn my microphone over to the city clerk. She'll call your name. If you can come up to the microphone, or if I can have some of the staff, one on this mic and one on that, so we can make sure we move through the questions. And then what we'll do is we'll tackle the questions at the end to be able to address all the questions that persons may have. Yeah, or somebody staff can just hand them mic to them.
Okay, the first one is going to be James Cuter, K-U-E, D as in David, A-R. The next one will be Nina, last name P-I-R-I-T-O, Perito. Any 2 of those are here?
Real quick question, and it was already asked. My name is James Cavita. Just how much are these going to cost? Or is it by foot?
For the cost of the mooring themselves, or the cost?
John, let us get through all the questions first.
Okay,
Is that the only question you have? Yeah. Okay, so we're going to address all the questions at the end.
just clarification, cost of the mooring or the cost to be at a mooring? Okay.
Hi, I'm Nina Pinto. Thank you for your time and all the work that's obviously gone into this presentation. I'm a resident, I'm a swimmer, and I'm a boater, and I'm 100% in favor of this proposal. I came in here thinking it was a good idea, but after you talked about the environmental impact, then I was completely sold. The pictures of the holes in the seabed damage and the picture of the bilge, as a swimmer, having swum through bilge, I can say it's absolutely disgusting, and if there's a way to remediate this through your environmental work, I applaud you and ask that you do it. A question I do have, I understand that boating is a luxury, it's not a right, but for some of us who maybe have a lower budget but cannot afford these expensive slips in marinas, now that everybody wants to come to Florida, including me, sorry I'm not native, but will they be accessible to residents like me? I pay property taxes, I live in Riviera Beach, I'm retired. What will the process be in terms of a lottery? Will there be more commercial people getting the moorings, or will it be residents with small boats? So those are my questions.
Thank you.
And also, will women have access? Because where I come from, it's always guys with the moorings. And
All right. Next.
Thank you. Miss Stephanie McMillan, MCILMAIL, Ryan Nagel, NAGSGEL, Ryan Nagel.
Steve McAmel. Question, Army Corps of Engineers approved this?
No, not yet.
Okay.
It's under public notice coming out shortly.
And will the moorings be on a lottery system, and will they be done yearly, or once one person gets it, they got it forever?
All right, write down those questions, guys. Write down
Yeah.
those questions. We'll answer
I
them.
was gonna say, I misspoke there.
Okay. Who's the next?
Hi, my name is Ryan Nagel. I'm the guy at the north end of the mooring field. First thing I want to address is that in your drawing, the 500-foot setback is not correct. And I brought this up when I spoke with you before. The circle goes through our property, so it's definitely not 500 foot back. Just what I'm looking at on your actual drawings. Second of all, every year we get smoked by hurricanes by probably 6 or 7 boats that are sunk. So I understand that this could be something that helps us. I just think it's too many, in my opinion. And I also think that everybody's talking about environmental stuff. Why don't we just make it a seagrass habitat and actually invest in it and then not allow people to anchor in that area? And so it's my understanding, talking to the West Palm Beach Fishing Club, that they did a mutton snapper tagging assessment, and a lot of the fish that they actually caught were actually south of us in that grass bed area. And to back that up, I feel like ecotourism should be the focus here in Riviera Beach. You're trying to rebrand the city. And I think that by bombing mooring fields throughout that whole area, it doesn't leave enough for the people to go snorkeling, see fish. Like, we could make a habitat. I feel like maybe you're not allowed to do that, but you're asking for, hey, what would you like to see? I personally just don't want to see 100 boats to the south of us, hoping that when a storm comes, the law enforcement's going to be there like, hey, let's make sure all these moorings are good, all the lines are tight. The guy just told you that if they don't have a good line to that thing, it doesn't even matter that it's there. So, are we really mitigating it, or are we actually making it worse? So if it's making it better, I'm all for it, because every time we pay out of pocket, and when we call the law, like, hey, storm's coming, what are you going to do? They're already set. They're done. They're gone. And then after the storm, you call the law, like, oh, we don't have any assets in the water. We can't help you. So I would like to see something done, but in my opinion, I would way rather see some sort of environmental seagrass thing go in than that many moorings. Thank you.
Mr. Greg Turner, Karen Barton, and Brandon Gary.
I've been here 35 years, and I have seen nothing but junk boats, and I've invested $50,000 on boat lifts and docks, and all it takes is one hurricane, and Phil Foster is going to be a devastated mooring, and all those boats are going to be in my living room. So I go through that. Anchorage and Sugar Sands just invested millions of dollars on a new seawall, and everybody that lives anywhere on Lake Worth is just going to be a victim of boats breaking free. So I love the mooring system, but we got to get rid of the junk boats too. So it has to be enforcement, management, and anybody that's been up to Newport, Rhode Island, or Annapolis, it is a tourist attraction. You pay $10 for a water taxi just to see the spectacular boats at anchor, the varnish, the beautiful hulls. But around here, it's just junk. And I'm just so tired of it. I almost want to move out of here just because I'm embarrassed to take friends family, anybody at the junk boats that we see around here. And there's commercial boats doing business at anchor and people just living like bums out there. It's totally embarrassing. So this is a great step, and I like it. So thank you, John, for all your effort. And that's about all I have. Thanks.
Karen Barton.
Right here. So the mooring fields are not going to be across from Sugar Sands, but that's been taken off. But will all the boats that are not going to be moored are going to now move into that area? We already have so many derelict boats and so many boats that are anchored, and there's no sewage maintenance. So now are those boats that don't have moors, are they coming my way? That's a real concern.
Duly noted.
Change order.
Mr. Bradford Gary, Mr. David Hoare, or H-O-R or H-O-I.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm a civilian mariner, a ship driver. We brought 3 ocean-going vessels down here from New England into Lake Worth a number of years ago. Delighted to be here. I got 30 years sea service. Now, the thing we haven't heard tonight, and I'd like to get some precise discussion on this, is that anchor systems, mooring systems, we described that we're looking at, have a 50% failure rate within 20 years. That's not my statistic. That's a report by Action, which is a leading mooring consultancy that did a report in October, which stated that 50% failure of mooring systems within 20 years. So you can have a failure at 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. So let's consider that, because that boat that is on a mooring that fractures, and these chains do fracture, you end up in your front yard. And you might, barge through the seagrass a little bit, but the boat being in your front yard is serious too. So there was 8-foot seas in this lagoon in 2004. A number of us lost boats. 8-foot seas. You think this static mooring system is going to handle 8-foot seas? No, it won't. It will not. So if you pull those boats off the 100 slips you've got out there, where are you going to put them? Where are you going to put them? What yard is going to take a transient boat right before a hurricane? No, those boats are going to be sitting out there for a big storm, and then they're going to end up in somebody's front yard unless we're careful. So let's be careful what we want here. But I'm a little concerned here about the environmental sales job we're getting here. About this is really going to be the answer to all our problems here. I'm not so sure about that. Anchor dragging, yes, it is a problem. But a boat that fractures this mooring and ends up in somebody's front yard is more of a problem. You've got a 100-ton vessel aiming across the lake with a fractured mooring. That's pretty damn dangerous. I would submit it that it's probably more dangerous to people than having a seagrass problem. But anyway, we'll work on that. But let me cite this again. The Action report, which you should all read, ACTEON, October last year, and they said, mooring failures occur in a wide range of water, depths, and regions. The consequences are very serious, including loss of life. So let's be careful out there, folks. You're going to make a mistake if you go for this mooring field. Thank you for your time.
After Mr. David, we'll have Mertese. Is it Crealeze?
My name's.
You can go ahead, sir.
My name's David Hoy. I'm a regular boater out here. I applaud what you guys are doing. I think it's a big step in the right direction. Obviously, there are questions, and some people may disagree, and I understand that. I respectfully think it's a great idea. There are a couple of questions. Some have been asked already in terms of cost, allocation, and moorings. I'd also like to know about time limits on moorings. I'd also like to suggest that if this does go ahead, that anybody on those moorings should have a minimum liability insurance to address some of the concerns that homeowners and property owners have. And thank you. I appreciate what you guys are doing.
After Ms. Martise will be William Conda, C-O-N-D-A.
Hi, I'm Mary Teresa Creelise. I also have property in Riviera Beach. I'd like to ask the question on how the planners and the implementers of this project intend to regulate areas that are currently anchored or not proposed for the mooring field, how you would stop those individuals that didn't want to pay the fee for the mooring field from anchoring in areas that also need to be protected, and how that would be monitored, regulated, and enforced, as well as the discharge that's happening in those situations currently and will happen when people are asked to pay a fee and they, from the boats that we see out there, in many instances don't have the wherewithal to pay the fee. And how would we do that? And I'm a 40-year boater. I've never had a mooring, and I've never been in a mooring situation, and I've used moorings all my life, where somebody has asked me for a liability insurance policy. That's just not reality. And also, how many times a day will you be inspecting these boats? Because people come in the middle of the night, they leave early in the morning. And I just think that there's a lot of regulation and policy that has to be determined prior to going ahead with this plan to make sure that everybody is comfortable with what the plan is trying to address and the manner in which it will address it. And I do thank you for all your efforts.
After Mr. William Honda, we're going to have Ms. Anna Vergney.
Yeah, I just want to say that it will screw over a big percent of people on Singer Island because all those derelict boats will move over to the other side. That being said, the environmental stuff that they're saying is BS. Seagrass regrows within a couple weeks or to a month. Also, I'm just not in favor of it. It doesn't take it. I do think you need a pump out boat. That's been needed for years. And whoever's dropped the ball on that, that's bad. We do need that. And the other major concern for seagrass is runoff from all the different chemicals that people put in their lawns, not chains. Yeah, that's pretty much it. But it will screw over a big portion of people by Singer Island.
After Ms. Anna Vergney, we have Jim Reich, R-I-K-E.
I'm going to try to be cool, calm, and collected because Mr. Evans and I have been going through this back and forth for 2.5 years on this mooring field. He's sitting on a petition to protest this mooring field. For everybody in this room, there are 321 signatures on it. Mr. Sprague, back during the fine meeting, suggested that the mooring between Blue Heron Bridge and Peanut Island was not a good area. Why is it not a good area? Because the Department of Environmental Protection does not recommend moorings in a sandbar. And that's literally what Mr. Foster called it, a sandbar. Okay, and just for those Singer Islanders that are here that chose to push that project to Lakeview Park, anybody can moor within 100 feet of that mooring field. So they're absolutely gonna come your way. That's not gonna solve your problem. You just created a problem for yourself. When we talk about seagrass, to the expert at the table, when you show those pictures up there, you need to be honest with our community. You show boat moorings according to the pictures you show, but you don't show the damage of 100 boats sitting on a mooring in a sandbar. You don't. You need to be honest with the communities that you serve. We pay for your service. Mr. Evans, why are we really here? If the city's gonna not make any money, why are we really here? You're gonna put a toilet in our backyard, and you're gonna damage the seagrass and Phil Foster. So why are we here, really? You're not really explaining that to us. Last year, the city of Riviera Beach paid $72,000 to get boats out of the water. I have monitored the money in this city. That's the best money they ever spent. there's Florida statutes that were created by DeSantis that will allow you to not have those moorings out there, yet you don't use them. So I am supporting Ryan Nagel in his ask to keep that a seagrass bed and not damage and put more demand on our community, because it's not fair. You also cause disadvantages to our community, and it's unethical.
After Jim Reich, we'll have Keith Beatty, B-E-A-D-Y, is it?
Hello, I'm Jim Reich. 50-year boater, and more importantly, I've lived on the Sugar Sands Harbor facing Phil Foster for 28 years. So my comments really I don't need to make because of the map that I saw. Our harbor is too small for a marina due to the, what you call a setback. So a few of my neighbors have commented, these boats are gonna come over to our harbor. Right now we have approximately 26 boats. Since I've been there, there's been about 26 boats, I mean, give or take. Normally no problems, you'll have some abandoned, but right now we have no problems. Most of them are just anchored. We might have one person live there, but this harbor is not policed. If we have a problem, we can forget help. Now, when these people flood in there, just remember, we're going to need help, and we're not getting it now.
After Mr. Keith, we will have BG Skies, S-K-S-Y-K-E, and then Scott Lewis.
All right, thank you. My name is Keith Beatty, and first I want to thank you for opening your project up for comments from those of us who are interested tonight. We appreciate that. I am the president of an organization called the Save Our Inlet Coalition, and I'm also a resident of the town of Palm Beach, and I have lived here for 40 plus years and been a boater all of that time. A lot's been said already, and I'm not going to repeat all of it. First and foremost, I want to echo what Ryan Nagel said. If there's a problem, let's look at all the solutions. A mooring field may not be the best solution for the problem that we face. And I'm not saying there aren't problems. Everybody here has talked about issues with derelict boats and other things, and there are 120 plus boats anchored off the town of Palm Beach right now that are unregulated and uncontrolled. But putting a mooring field in that location may not be the best solution. For one, that used to be an incredible recreation area for people and kids. My kids grew up sailing and using that area to learn how to sail. They can no longer do that. So and a mooring field won't solve that problem. So there are solutions that are not being looked at as a part of this process. The other thing the general comment I'd like to make too is, you've got a cart pulling the horse here. No one's presented a management or operational budget or any rules or regulations on how this these proposed mooring fields are going to be managed and regulated, or any of the other details necessary for anybody looking at this project to help make a decision on whether or not to go forward with it or not. And one of the things that I'm deathly afraid of is that you'll build a house too big for your budget. And once you've done that and you go out of business, and we've got 150 or 200 moorings sitting out there, who's going to take care of them? Who's going to remove them? What's going to happen? It's just one issue. There are many issues. But maybe if you're going to go forward with this project, you should post a bond to remove it all at some stage, if that becomes a problem. But you've already said you're losing money on it, or at least not making money. So Someone else has already raised that question. Why are we doing it? There should be a reason beyond just selling it as a protection for or correction for environmental problems that currently exist, especially if we have not looked at other means of solving those problems. Thank you.
Mr. B.G. Sykes, Mr.
Hello.
Scott Lewis, and Ms. Marvelous Washington.
Hi, B.G. Sykes. I'm 333 East 24th Street. So in the picture, I was in the upper left corner. For the record, I have a permitted DEP dock that goes out 488 feet, which we haven't put in. As the city knows, we've been in discussions for some time. So I'd be going out to within about 12 feet of the western edge of the mooring field. My issues, and I should also say that I'm on the board of Lagoon Keepers. So largely, we've pulled out whatever 450 boats in the last 21 or 2 years. So Greg Reynolds is sick today, and so I send the Lagoon Keepers regards. So obviously, we know about derelict vessels and removing vessels and seagrass. It's always a balancing test between having a completely virgin area and having people that are able to enjoy it on many levels. And so it's a balancing test. I'm not saying I have the right answers. I'm not saying anybody has the right answers. But there are always a series of compromises that allow both to be equally unhappy, and that's usually the correct plan. So that is what I have to say about the balancing test. Okay, everybody has to respect other uses. I think that the mooring fields, having seen these in operation in southern Florida, but I've been licensed by the Coast Guard since '78. In seeing these in Newport, in seeing these in Nantucket, in seeing these in Marion, Massachusetts, these work. People want to be here. Either you're going to change federal law and say you can't come here and you can't anchor, and then the Fed might say, well, gee, if we can't have a waterway that's free to everybody, maybe you guys shouldn't have any of our money. I mean, this is a multiple faceted issue, and we have to allow other people use. You don't take away uses to people. The demand, as we all know from being in the marine industry here and it being part of our lives, is tremendous. The dockage rates have gone up 5 times in terms of 500% since I've been here in 2002. So, I mean, this is a drastic change in people's finances. The mooring field is a great solution. I think we have an intelligent body here, audience and panel, and we want to see good management come. There needs to be a harbor master for Riviera Beach. There needs to be somebody that can say, get your boat out of here, it's a piece of junk. You're not allowed here, leave. Somebody has to have authority, and there has to be enforcement. Being in Lagoon Keepers, we see the conflict between sheriff, FWC, nobody knows the regulations, nobody wants to tag a boat, people are lazy, it doesn't work. So there needs to be authority. The pump-up boat obviously is a 5-star plus. We need more than one pump-up boat. On my front lawn, we've had fecal matter come from Peanut Island, and people going to the end of the street and walking on the sand, they don't realize what they're stepping in. Boats have to be pumped out. Thank you for your time.
Scott Lewis, Marvelous Washington, and Steve Carswell. Is Mr. Scott Lewis here? Okay, Ms. Washington, you can go.
Hi, I'm Marvelous Washington. I just really have a couple questions. How much will this managed mooring field cost for installation? What portion of those costs will be taxpayer dollars? And what was the alternative site for the managed mooring field, and why was that changed to the other site near Peanut Island? I must concur with some of the previous speakers is that if we're not set to gain any revenue from this new installation, then what is the point of us? What is the point of us being here? Why are we having this discussion? We understand that there's a need for more environmental protections, but I don't think we should use environmental protections as an excuse to make an irrational decision. And I think that that has been a trend of our administration as the state of Florida in general, is that we tend to use environmental protections for decisions that should not be made. If the residents are saying they don't want it, if the residents that actually live within a community in Lakeshore Drive saying that you're impeding on the lifestyle that they purchased their homes for to be able to have beach access, then why are we this up for discussion? If it was decided not to use the initial site as a managed mooring field, then that's the same reason why sure residents don't want it in their backyard. So I think you just need to listen to the residents about this, but I would like to know how much a taxpayer dollar is going to be costing installation. And the gentleman actually made a good point. When it comes to a time we need to remove these mooring field, this managed mooring field, how much is that going to cost us? I mean, how much would maintenance cost us yearly to maintain the mooring fields? Those type of questions and answers we haven't received, and I think is a reason why we haven't received those. Thank you.
Mr. Steve Carswell, Stephen B-A-B-A-M-O, and Mr. Frank and D. Hutchison.
Hello, my name's Steve Carswell. I live 2 doors north of the Coast Guard station. And the last couple storms, I saw a prime example of these boats pulling free and floating like ghost boats dragging their anchors. And they hit our walls and did all that damage. So, I guess let me ask my questions. How long can you stay? How much does it cost? What does it cost to replace one of those? The derelict boat thing, you mentioned there was a budget or something available for removing these derelict boats. Is this the derelict ones that are attached to our buoys, or is it all of the derelict boats in our lagoon? And honestly, I've been in Riviera Beach 10 years. I grew up in North Palm, been boating in and out of Peanut forever. I live in Riviera now for 10 years. My place of business is in Riviera Beach, so I'm all in Riviera Beach. And I got to tell you, I think it's slowly coming along. I'm not trying to stay focused on the mooring thing, but I think we're opening a new venue for Riviera Beach. I think Riviera Beach has its hands full. I've been a businessman here for 10 years. No, I'm sorry, 14 years. And I think Riviera Beach has its hands full. And how are they going to manage and budget this? Another project, right? And by the way, I think it's coming along nicely over the time, and that's about it. Thanks.
Mr. Stephen?
Yes.
Mr. Frank and D. Hutchison, and then Lady Goldwire.
So I live, French. So I live on East 23rd Street. We have some concerns about this project for all the reasons mentioned before. We're already dealing in our neighborhood with the Rybovich expansion. We seem to be stuck between 2 huge projects that are going to impact directly our community. So I think we'll just like a little break. We've heard your environmental concerns. I am not convinced it's perfectly, how do I put it? Well, it sounds a little bit like greenwashing. If I had a question, it'd be, how are you going to manage if the point is to protect the seagrass? How are you going to manage 50 or so diesel engine in that little cove, and then the shuttle back and forth between the boats and wherever you're going to get the people to get on the road and back home, because I'm worried they're just going to end up on 24th Street or with just anchor the dinghy in our street to go to Publix or park their car in our little neighborhood. So what do you plan to do about this? Thank you.
Frank and D. Hutchison, Lady Goldwire, followed by Alex Hill, Hill. Frank and D. Hutchison? No? Lady Goldwire? No? Alex Hill? Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes, I have a couple questions, Lady Goldwire. The first one is with regard to the location. I think Marvelous addressed it initially. If it was unwanted on the island, why has it been pushed further west? If somebody could indicate what the selection or what the process was in selecting a new spot. The next question is, if the city is going to be responsible for the environmental cleanup and all of the monitoring that you say has to occur, and it's going to be on the city dime, what is the cost to taxpayers? Are those services going to be in-house or are they going to be outsourced? It seems as if the city is already on the cusp of some very critical issues with regard to financing employee furloughs, layoffs, hiring freezes. So if we don't have the money to maintain administration as it is, how do we then find the money to take care of these additional items associated with maintenance of these mooring fields? And finally, I've been employed with the city as emergency personnel pre and post hurricane, and the aftermath is, in fact, true to source. Residents are often left to their own devices. What solution-driven approaches will you take to ensure that there's going to be middle ground in balancing the concern to preserve the seagrass issues and keeping people happy? There seems to be zero consideration made for ensuring that the access is going to be equitable. How do we ensure that people who get access to these mooring, these spaces here don't get to stay for extended periods of time, or how are they going to rotate who gets to use them and who does not?
Thank you, Mr. Frank and D. Hutchison, and Mr. Alex Hill, Ms. Cindy March. There's no Frank? No, they're gone. All right. What about Alex Hill? All right.
Good evening, Alex Hill. I'm a resident Riviera Beach. Also have a branch of a marine electronics business here on 19th Street and Broadway. Certainly applaud many things that are going on positively in Riviera Beach. I lived in Lake Park, just up the street from where I currently live on Lakeshore Drive for many years, and very happy to have bought a condo recently in Riviera Beach. So in fact, I look straight across. My view is at the little anchorage north of Phil Foster Park, and certainly hope that some plan will be made to deal with the situation there. And all the people here that have spoken that live in Silver Sands, they're right on. You know, I mean, if you introduce a managed mooring field only in part of the lake, you simply shift some of the boats somewhere else. So a comprehensive plan has to account for all of those areas. Question for later, of course, a little confusion on my behalf. Did not understand that the city of Riviera Beach actually extended down south of Peanut Island. I thought that was West Palm Beach. So we can clarify that later, but I'd certainly want to understand how is West Palm Beach and Riviera Beach and Lake Park all working in North Palm Beach. Whoever has the jurisdiction up and down this lake, which is a very confusing situation, as my friends from Lagoon Keepers and others know, will discuss this, because you can't just create a solution in one area to simply shift the problem somewhere else. Last, I'll also note that I'm the Commodore of the Palm Beach Sailing Club. We have many of our members are on mooring balls, living on their boats out to the east of our sailing club, and use our sailing club as their entry access point for their dinghies. They are responsible boaters. They have installed their own private moorings. They are not out there on anchors, because they know that being on an anchor during a blow is not a good way to sleep at night. But they would like to see, and as Mr. Hoy spoke earlier, progress made, pump out boats, you know, because they suffer when there are the derelict boats, the anchored boats that break free and damage their vessels. I do hope you'll take a little more serious look at the reality of the boating industry these days. 30 to 40 foot length is not going to be sufficient. Maybe that was just in that one presentation. Many of our members now have 40, 45, 50, nearly 55 foot larger boats, catamarans out there. Those are a lot more windage. Make sure that these moorings will account for that. But on behalf of the Palm Beach Sailing Club, we're here to be part of the solution. We don't want to be seen as part of the problem. Thank you.
Miss Cindy March, and Miss Marie Davis. Okay, Miss Marie Davis, you're next.
Full disclosure, I'm a resident here in Riviera Beach, and I live on Singer Island. I'm also a legislative assistant to Tradwick McCoy, Councilman Tradwick McCoy, who is not here this evening, unable to attend, and we have been bombarded by residents of the Lakeview, Lakeshore Drive, and so forth, with real concerns about the mooring field and how it's going to impact them as residents. There is a lot of, they feel they're being squeezed, for lack of a better term, between, with regard to the business district, business areas, areas meaning Rybovich and the other marinas. But there's no consideration for the people who are actually living there. So if there are going to be 43 moorings, 43 boats in this small area, that means there are going to be 43 dinghies too. So where is the dinghy field, mooring field going to be? Or is there going to be one? And what about the noise pollution? I live, as I said, on Singer Island on the waterfront, and I can tell you that there's also Sugar Sands people here. Every morning at 7:30, there's a man 400 feet away clearing his throat. So now, if he doesn't, we think he died. Is that true? And someone else hears him in the evening. And it's a fact, so you multiply that by 43 engines, 43 people talking, clearing their throats and singing or drinking or whatever, and then you have the dinghies. So what do you do with the people who already live there, the people who are paying taxes all these years? So you have noise pollution, and you have oil and gas smells that they're already experiencing just from the marine industry. So I probably have 40 questions from residents that I'll just put in writing and not bore you all tonight. Thanks.
That's the end of public comments, Mr. Evans.
All right, we're going to go ahead and try to address all these questions. And then if there is an opportunity for some additional questions, we'll take some from the floor. So I know, Mr. Sherman, you've been writing down. I think everybody's been writing down certain questions. So if you can help orchestrate some of those questions and toss it to our experts to be able to provide some clarity.
All right, well, so the first question that I had was from the cost of the moorings. How much does it cost to put them in, and then do we know what it's going to cost to rent?
They'll be somewhere between $4,000 to $4,500 per mooring. The difference in that is if we know we're going to have some that'll take 60-foot boats or whatever. So if we're going to do that, we may increase the size and the strength. They're basically done when we say a 60-foot boat. It's based on tonnage and pull, which is not equal with all boats. So each mooring will have certain information on it. In other words, based on depth, you can't put more than a boat that draws more than 6 feet. And under DEP's rules, still maintain distance from the bottom of the keel to the bottom so it can't hit seagrass, as an example. But somewhere between $4,000, $4,500. And is that current in the stuff that you're working on now?
We'll get to next question.
Okay. Next question. In the managed mooring field plan, what's the accessibility to residents with small boats and women boaters?
All right, so this is similar to our marina. You know, we tore down and we did this. When I started that project and discussion with the council, we didn't want to tear all the marina out, throw everybody out. So it was designed to be done in stages. So we could keep most of the customers, and then as we added to it, we finally went back. So it's basically first come, first serve. We have a very good management company that's running our marina. The city actually takes in very good revenue from that marina. Based on the mooring field, when you talk about cash profits, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to increase the staff of the marina, so they'll come off the bottom line to pay for that. I've discussed it with the police department as well as administration. that we need to get more law enforcement aimed out on our water. We have 2 marine officers, and we need to get them out on the water more. We need to go after all the derelict boats, which is a lot easier because they will not be on the mooring field. You know, they have to prove that they can navigate, they gotta have current registrations. We're gonna have all the information on them, on the boat. Even cleats, you know, we'll check those on the front, and they may have to replace the cleats on the front because we don't want these boats to break loose. That's the whole reason why we're designing. We heard about chains. We're not using chains. You know, they use them up north. I don't like them on north because if you ever used them in Maine and you go to pull it up, it's a round rod of mud, and you got to hose off every 3 feet as you go. And then the anchor breaks loose, and now you start dragging into all of the lobster traps, buoys and whatever those. So we use Helice for that reason, so there is no chains.
All right, and also, let's make sure we stick to the exact question so we can move through the questions.
Okay.
So let's go, Mr. Sherman.
Okay, a gentleman brought up creating a seagrass habitat. Somebody want to address that?
Say that one more time.
The seagrass habitat?
Seagrass, first of all, grows where it wants to grow. You can plant seagrass where it's not today, and it'll die. You know, it takes a certain water quality, depth, light penetration. There's a whole mixture in there. In the areas that we've got both mooring fields, has got with it as well. Why did we pick that? Because we want to protect it and at the same time operate moorings.
Let me also defer to the environmental engineer as it relates to the seagrass habitat. Is that something that's conceivably doable, permittable, et cetera?
I think from a permitting standpoint, it's going to be a challenge to eliminate boats from that area. And we're going to be fighting state and federal law that are going to say we can illegally park here or park here under the current jurisdiction. So that's the big problem, and that's what you have there today. So people are just out there docking and so forth, and you can't write a ticket or cut their line and tell them they have to leave because of the seagrass. In a managed field, you can manage that process and keep people to a defined area and then properly manage the sanitary discharges with the pump out boat and so forth. You can't do that when you have the current situation, which is not only here, but it's statewide.
So one of the other questions that came up related to that is, okay, you have a managed mooring field now, and so can conceivably somebody be 50 yards away or 100 yards away and shift the issue to another part?
Potentially, they could, I mean, that area can't be defined for the whole area. You know, it's got to be a defined location. Could somebody be just outside of it? Probably that could happen, but I think the geometry that we've got, if we've got a navigation channel, we've got the ICW, you can keep them out of those locations with security, which you would have increased security measures as well, which is one of the things we talked about.
All right. Next question.
The next question is, by putting in the mooring fields, is this going to, in essence, push the derelict vessels over to the Sugar Sands area?
Well, all right, so that's really twofold. First of all, as part of the funding that we receive, we're going to increase law enforcement on the water, so we get rid of all the derelict boats once and for all. The process right now is law enforcement applies for money, and it can take as much as 8 months. Lagoon keepers, I think you can back that up, and I deal with Greg with that all the time. In the delays of law enforcement in being able to take care of the boat. And the problem is if they seize that boat, they're now liable. So now they're going to take it into a marina, and they're going to pay marina rates while we wait for some judge and whatever to go through a process. I do intend to allocate 2 or 3 moorings that can be used for law enforcement. So if we do have boats that we can't get rid of on a timely basis, we can stick them on a mooring, we can make sure they're pumped out. And so we're going to have some extra staff at the marina because we're going to deal with all the dinghies. That's where they're going to wind up, is at our marina. We have a couple different places where we can put the dinghies at the marina already, but we're also going to have the shuttle boats so we can cut down on the number of and especially in inclement weather. I don't know how many of you have been in a dinghy when it's pouring rain and you're coming back with your groceries with your boat. And so, you know, we're hoping that the shuttle will offset safety issues, dinghy issues, and whatever to make it how everything works. But what we don't want, which you have no control over now, the anchored out boats put their dinghies wherever they want them.
So I think the other question was, will the other existing derelict boats go elsewhere? And I think the short answer is, yeah, they probably will, but at least they're not here in front of your properties, you know, ending up on your beaches and so forth.
And hold on, everyone. At the beginning of the meeting, I asked us to be respectful of the comments and allow for folks to answer the questions. Please let him make his comment, and if there's additional follow-up that's necessary to provide clarity to the issue, we can certainly do that. Let's not get into the back and forth. We want to be able to hear your comments and your concerns, share those with the policymakers, and find solutions to the problem. So please, let's not get into that back and forth with regards to the questions. They're trying to provide a response to some of the questions you all had.
And to add to that, there was the question about how does Riviera Beach get to build on the mooring field south of the turning basin? Well, there's two issues with that. We have two channels down there. The ICW is on the west side and the Palm Beach Channel is on the east. There are no riparian rights that go beyond those two channels. So the mid state bottomland. So my early beginning discussions with Florida Department of Environmental Protection said, don't worry about those kinds of things. We own that land, and if you can show to us that you are going to take care of the seagrass damage, provide pump out, and do the things that falls under our requirements, and we have a list of everything that they want us to do, having to do with that mooring field, we will greatly consider issuing the permit to the city in that area. You know, we are a government, we may not be the right one, but no other government has stepped up to do anything, including a pump-out boat.
How will the moorings be doled out? Is it a lottery system?
They're going to be first come, first serve. I can't, you know, we have a good management company that runs the marina. Fortunately, I don't make that decision. That's going to get turned over to our management company, but it's no different than a marina. The only advantage of this is we're putting in moorings for generally boats up to 60 feet. So whether it's 40 feet or whether it's 50 feet or whether it's 60 feet, we're going to be able to take it because most of the moorings will be able to do that. Not all of them. So we're going to be designed for smaller boats. Depends upon our water depths. Especially on the South Basin. There are some areas of shallow, and every mooring will have numbers on it, and it'll tell you the draft of the boat cannot exceed at this particular mooring, and they have to go to a different mooring. So that's kind of how we control the lengths. But first come, first serve is with, you know, it's like a hotel. Well, how can I be assured I get a hotel room? Same deal. Now, I will tell you under Florida state law, which may or may not apply, and we'll know that question during the process, is that they generally do not want any leases that go beyond 1 year. And that basically means you have to reapply. Doesn't mean you can't stay or whatever, but that is to just so they have some oversight on the length of times and whatever. Part of that question, I think, was, you know, liveaboards and whatever. And management will make a decision based on different things as to how many boats that live aboard, which means that they have no residence anywhere else in the country. An occupied vessel that is cruising is not a liveaboard. It's an occupied vessel. But those vessels are generally traveling, only going to be here for a certain period of time. And our rate structure will be based on like a daily rate, which will be up to a certain period, a monthly rate, and an annual rate. So that'll all come out in the wash when we look at the actual cost. But we've got additional staff to hire. We have additional law enforcement to pay for so we can direct our law enforcement to go out on the water and deal with the derelict boats and also protect the mooring field, no different than our marina.
And I can just add, and then I'll turn it over to the team here. Obviously, I think there was a tone that making sure fair and equitable access. So I'm going to make sure that there is some type of process. I don't subscribe to the first come, first serve. I think it has to be some type of lottery system or some systems, especially if there's a demand and if there's just something we're going to. So we'll refine that if this moves forward as to what the process is and allow for adequate notice for persons to be available to say, hey, this lottery system is open. Because what we don't want to have a situation where we contract that function out and then you come to find out that there's a situation where whomever knows or has a relationship or a previous engagement with the contractors are the ones that get those spots. So we'll make sure if this is something we move forward, that we monitor and make sure that's a fair and equitable process.
Okay, several speakers talked about breakage, failure, and inspection. Can you address those in the plan?
That address that. The gentleman
on the, and any project has a design life, and if the design life of these structures is 20 years, a lot of recreational marinas, the docks are 30 to 50 years. Concrete might be closer to 50. Aluminum systems could be 20 to 30. This is, at 20 years, that actually sounds like a normal life for something that's taking that kind of a load. And the city would simply need to budget for that. And prior to the 20 years, just like in a reserve study, you set aside money to replace that field as it gets to its expected design life. So I don't think that's a big issue, and 20 years was actually not a surprise to me.
Oh, yeah, no, it's what he says is exactly right. It's usually budgeted in, the maintenance is usually covered. The gentleman was talking about the reports that had a 45% failure is the very reason these systems were developed. That's chain systems, that's industrial, it's offshore. It's a correct report, has absolutely nothing to do with this. These have way less than 1%. So this has been proven, they're all over the place. All of those concerns, very legitimate from these folks, have been dealt with the places we worked in the last 20 years. Boot Key Harbor, St. Augustine, so all those same things were worked through. And so I've seen the same concerns and I've seen how they were addressed. So there is a successful way forward for most of their concerns. And the process you're talking about is the boats that don't want to be in the mooring field or don't want to participate, that want to anchor somewhere else. They've usually got those buffer zones, as you said, where the channel and provides areas where they're not going to go. There are areas they will go to somewhere along the waterway, but they're few and far between. And it's usually just another way of chasing that management. But yeah. Oh, well, we've seen that addressed around the state, so it's a very typical thing. And there's a pattern to follow that you can see what's going on.
Okay, we had the question about moorings on sandbars.
So I assume that was referring to the sandbars that are north of Peanut Island. We have no moorings east of the Atlantic Intercoastal Waterway. There's no moorings proposed north of Peanut Island or any of the sandbar areas whatsoever.
Question did come up about what is this going to cost the government. And so let me address this real quick. The marina operates on its own. The marina charges fees. Those fees are used to operate the marina. The marina right now is turning about $1 million profit on an annual basis. Before the new marina was put in and upgraded, the marina had run about a $5 million deficit. So for the past few years while that marina has been running, it's paying off that debt. But the marina will cover the costs of the mooring fields, the additional enforcement, the inspections. We don't see this as a general fund issue. This is a marina issue, and the marina is intended to cover it. Once we know the counts and we know the costs and we get the management plan approved and adopted, then we can start putting some cost to what those actual moorings will be charged out at.
So no property tax ad valorem revenue will be utilized to pay for, manage, maintain build the mooring fields.
Correct, and it'll also include, as Mr. Sprague said, enhanced marine patrol from the police department. or
So it'll actually
force.
reduce the fiscal burden on the general fund if this moves forward.
Correct, because the thinking is to take the Marine Division obviously reports under the police department, but the cost of that Marine Division would go to the Marine.
In addition, there's grant funding available, no different than most of the marinas. We've received 50% grant funding to help build the marina. I believe we can get at least 50 and maybe as much as 100% to do the mooring field, the mooring boat, et cetera. So we don't even burden the marina with a lot of those capital costs.
We did have the comment about, or again, several speakers brought up, where would the dinghies be docking?
There's 3 different places that we're looking at the city marina, where we can house dinghies that are in areas at the present docks that we really can't dock boats at, that we can use for dinghies. But we're also hoping with the shuttle boat that will greatly reduce the number of dinghies. A lot of these boats are going to be stored. And that's probably one of the problems that we have with stored boats is inactivity is where they get in trouble because they don't check lines, they don't check the bilges, et cetera. So part of the rules means they've got to come out a certain number of times and check their boats. But it also means when they're being stored, they're not using dinghies and they're very seldom back and forth to their boats.
And I apologize if I missed somebody's question, but that's all I have.
All right, at this time, I'm going to allow for each of the panelists to go over some of the questions and notes you have for any final remarks, and then we'll take a couple questions from the floor. If there is some additional questions, we'll start right here.
Thank you. Yeah, just to restate, I think the part of it that hasn't been developed yet is the final management and operations plan that the city's operator is going to do, and then that'll specifically determine how slips will be allocated and so forth. I don't know if you're able to, especially if there's outside state funding, but in some locations we've been able to have a preference for city residents, so you could actually have 2 waiting lists, one for everybody and one for city residents, and that might be a possibility if legally we're able to do that depending on funding.
A couple things. One thing on the first come, state of Florida generally has a rule on state lands that says first come, first serve. And the reason why they do that is they want to make sure that there's no, well, we're holding this for Joe, Sam, and Robert. And that's one of the reasons why the lease is held to 1 year and that they're first come, first serve. And that's generally a submerged land lease. That's what they require in Florida. Questions, let me see what else. We talked about not off of Peanut Island. Grant payments going to help. All right, law enforcement's a big one. That's the only way we're going to get rid of the derelict vessels. And we've been having some discussions on trying to get Riviera law enforcement, Palm Beach's law enforcement, you know, the cities that have law enforcement to get a unit together between them so we can go after them on a concerted basis and get rid of the derelict boats. But they continue to come. You know, we wipe them out in the hurricanes, and a few months later, they're back. But if we have a place to put regular boats with the rules and regulations to make sure those boats don't go derelict, and let them store them or whatever, and have a place for them to go, we think we can go a long ways. Let's see, cost of insulation, we've got that. All right, so Singer Island moving, yeah, you're going to have some derelict boats and not derelict boats because you cannot anchor in a mooring field and you cannot anchor within 100 feet of a mooring field. Also, the federal channel has got a setback. So you can't stay there. So we designed the field with the setbacks between the channel and the east side of the mooring field, and then you take the moorings going in, and then you take the marina setbacks and the locations of those. we pretty well locked up most of the water. So there is no place for them to go on anchor, otherwise they'll be in violation. And that violation is state law. You cannot anchor within a certain, that's an arrestable offense. And therefore, our law enforcement can deal with those issues. But that doesn't mean they can't go north of the bridge, or they go south to Curry Park, or they're gonna go somewhere else. But that's where law enforcement, we need to pick them off. Now, if they're a legitimate cruising boat that we don't have room for, and they come here to visit during the winter, they're gonna wind up anchoring. There are the rights of navigation. You just can't say you can't anchor. You know, they've got federal law behind them to support the rights of navigation. We're not saying they can't take care of their boat, just in this area, no different.
No, wait. I said, let us get through it, and I will give an opportunity for additional questions. Hold on. Well, I will let you get an opportunity to ask a question.
There was a couple questions with the town of Palm Beach and whatever. Yeah, I mean, it's easy, you know, what else are you gonna do if you can't keep them from anchoring? We're just gonna continue to let them go sit where they are, discharge waste and whatever. And also, those two sunk boats that were on the bottom, that was one boat that was an anchor, and Palm Beach Police towed the other boat over and attached it, and then they let both of them sink. So, Palm Beach hasn't done a whole lot in taking care of what's off of their waters when you look at all the damage.
Okay. Anything else, John?
Phil Foster, I might as well bring that up. We looked at Phil Foster. I probably proposed too many boats in that field, but I expected Sugar Sands and some of the others to come back and say, wait a minute, too many boats, but they didn't. So just based on the heat, we pulled out from Singer Island. Yeah, we did design it with a good, but we can't get 500 feet. It's just not, you know, as you saw with the kind of circles. But what we did try and do is like an 80-foot channel that ran along Sugar Sands, along the houses below, and then by the Sheriff's Department and Phil Foster, the park. And that would be totally clear. And we put whatever moorings we could in that center, and also move them further toward the ICW and out of the actual whatever. But that's not my decision. Anyway, that's where we went with, and you can't, I mean, if you're gonna, don't forget that each one of these boats, like, we've got like a 120-foot circle. So, you know, you got a 60-foot boat, 120 feet, and then we add 30 to it to make sure they can't hit one another. So when you put a 150-foot circle on each mooring, even though the boat's only 60 feet and it moves around, you can only put so many of those circles in Phil Foster. And we have an economy of scale. We don't want to cost taxpayers money. You have to have enough money to get the staff, to get the law enforcement, the pump-out boat. You know, those things cost money, so it's an economy of scale of the number of boats, and that goes into the system.
Okay. All right, any other comments? All right, at this time, I'm going to open it up for questions, please. Questions, and we'll allow for, I'm going to work my way through the room, one question, and then we'll get all the way over here, and then if we have enough time, we'll get back. But go ahead, sir, your first question.
Areas, designate areas that you are not allowed to moor for more than so many
The only thing I can tell you is north of the bridge is within the city, and the intent is for our marine units to deal with all the boats off of the city of Riviera Beach.
So let us get through the questions, and then we'll come back and address those. So. Okay. So question is there a statute that speaks to that? And we'll get back to that as soon as we move through. Question here and then here. Oh, sorry, sir. You were first, actually, right here. I'm sorry, and then I'll go back.
Chase out all the derelict boats, it might be worth to have a couple of quality boats there instead of 50 derelict boats.
Yeah.
So maybe a couple token mooring buoys and Phil Foster could be better than 50 derelict boats.
Okay. Sir? Okay. So question on that, is there an option, an alternative that decreases the density and intensity and has a situation where there is something there, but something of better quality that doesn't consistently create the nuisance issue that folks were speaking of? Okay, we'll get back to that. Yes, ma'am.
Correct.
Okay, help me understand when I call, when I have a derelict vessel in my yard, that Riviera Beach says we can't do anything about it, that is not our jurisdiction.
Okay.
The problem you have is no one claims responsibility and it gets charged. So you as an official involved in this, I would like to understand, unless I am wrong.
Well, I think our Marine officer is here, so he can probably speak to that question when we get to that. All right? These two right here, or the three in a row right here, and then we'll come here to you, sir. Yes. Here.
The gentleman said we have $1 million surplus coming in from the Marina currently. Is that true?
Yeah.
Okay, then why aren't we taking that extra million and put it towards a harbor master currently instead of waiting for this mooring field to come in? So we can address the derelict boats with the money that we're generating from Marina now. Do we have a harbor master or do we just have two marine buoys,
So,
which is not sufficient?
so we'll speak to that and what the arrangement is now currently, but there is, sir.
The county area juts out in front of Peanut Island, the north end. You're gonna do this mooring field in front of, I live on the end of 20. All that crap was already piled up on Peanut Island that nobody polices. And if there's a problem boat at the mooring field, can it be removed? If it's noise after 11 o'clock or whatever, which
Okay.
could be a huge problem for all homeowners on that side.
Okay.
To me, if you don't work
So regulatory, a situation, if there is an issue with somebody that is mooring there, how is that issue resolved? And then how collaborations with other jurisdictions that may be out of our span of control to ensure that we're not pushing the issue further north, further south, further east, further west.
Just curious, on the environmental side, how do we have a non-motor zone behind Monument Island in the same county? And you said you can't do it.
Okay, we'll answer that.
You explained earlier about the south mooring field, that Riviera Beach had jurisdiction because between the east and west channels, it's state riparian bottom.
It's state-owned, not just, they own it.
So if it's state-owned, why did your plan stop at the Ribovich and not go all the way down to Flagler Bridge?
John, we're going to address that. Let's get all the questions first. All right. Yes, ma'am, and then sir.
Yeah, my question is more pointed financially. So is the financial structure going to be an enterprise fund for the town of Riviera Beach? How will it be funded, and how will it be monitored? And if there isn't sufficient revenues to support the structure, how will that be addressed in the design of the enterprise fund, which will have to be voted by the government?
Okay. Sir. That's a good question. Okay.
I've been volunteering with the Goonkeepers for about 5 years, and I've seen this disaster happen with these derelict boats. It takes about 8 months to go through the law enforcement process to even get a sunk boat out of the water. That's my question is what process are you going to have this mooring field and say, okay, you guys all have to leave? Half of them say, I'm not leaving. Half of them are not even there to ask to leave. Are you going to grab all these boats and drag them out the ocean, or are you going to drag them somewhere else? So the process, I think it's great that at least finally somebody's addressing it, trying to do something. But it just takes so long to get even a boat that's sunk. And,
Yeah.
you know, it's goonkeepers.org, they operate, they're nonprofit. You know, they operate on the community's goodwill to get these things out of there. And we're court ordered for community service, so, you know, it's a good thing for the community, but it's just the time frame. It takes 8 months to get a sunk boat out now. What are you gonna do when somebody says, I'm not leaving?
Right. So, question, you build a mooring field, I think it's great, but I'm not leaving. So, we'll get to, not yet, John.
You can't even build it, because I'm not leaving, so you can put.
So, all right, so we got a person that just not moving. So we'll go ahead and we'll address that.
Hey, my name's Tom Ladamo. I work for a local developer. I used to work for a seawall company years ago as a general manager and project manager. I actually live on 22nd Court. Got an outfall there, and I work with your boss. Well, not your boss, but not probably. Greg. Greg, yeah. Great guy. He brings up a real serious question I think we all need to take into consideration, and it's as far as the derelict boats go, and who's coming in to the new mooring building. I'm not exactly against it, but I'm not exactly for it. We don't know who these individuals are. We don't know who's out there on the boats now. What is their background check? Is there gonna be background checks done by law enforcement before, you know, a mooring, you know, permit is allowed? If we don't take that into consideration, I think that might be something you guys kind of chew on for a little bit.
Well, and I can tell you and I'll defer to law enforcement, but they have to have probable cause. They can't just run background checks with regards to that. So there's some constitutional issues with regards to that. We had a question here. Any other? Here and then here. Yes, here first. Question, please.
The question is, you had meetings with Singer Island residents. The people that are most impacted by this project is Lakeland Park. We already are
Your question. Okay. All right, we'll note that. Okay. Here and then here, and then over here. Yes.
It should come to pass that these boats do move to Sugar Sands, and Sugar Sands people finally realize that is there any possibility a city could then do a small mooring field that's called a token, I think, within that spot that was previously
Yeah.
proposed? Is that
Yeah.
possible?
So, and I want to speak to that because that's been a topic or a conversation that's come up with respect to folks in Sugar Sands and what have you. I think we have to look at it holistically and globally. I don't think we need to look at a situation that just because there was a situation where the option for Sugar Sands met some opposition. I think to the point that was made earlier, if there is right now 26 boats, maybe there's 10 moors that are there or 5. And I do also want to mention that when you see what's being proposed, it is just that, it's proposed. The intensity and the density and the amount, that can change. So if it's a situation where it's a smaller field, those are conversations that we're having with the community to get your input and feedback on. And so I think every option and alternative needs to be on the board. We talked about the preservation of a seagrass area. Can you do it? Well, we found out that you probably can't. But that's what this conversation is, to look at all options and alternatives and then be able to inform the policymakers as to what's the best options to them. The do-nothing option is still an option, but the board needs to know all the options that are at their disposal. Yes?
Why is there not a pump-out boat or a couple of pump-out boats now? It just doesn't make sense to me. There's no law enforcement. I call, I write letters, we have boats coming in the middle of the night. They sink. Who knows? I called, are there drugs in them? Are they smuggling drugs? Are they smuggling people? We get zero help. It's very frustrating.
Okay.
Apparently there's something supposed to be one marine police boat. Very rarely, I mean, we saw him once, only because I was a real pain in the ass, because I was worried that this boat was coming in my backyard. And I was worried. Again, are they smuggling people? Is it drugs? Somebody else comes and anchors up, and he's right in my bedroom. I'm looking, I can see him like I can see you. You know, you guys, I think, as a city, we live in an island where probably, I would say maybe 60% voters, you guys dropped the ball on law enforcement for the waterways.
Well, and I'll defer to the law enforcement. It's a lot more complicated, and it's a lot. It shouldn't be. I would agree, but it is. But it is. Yes. Okay. Okay. What the current law is. So let me throw it to. We've got a bunch of questions that I know the group has been looking to address. But yeah. Oh, sorry. But I want to be able to. Well, let me get these questions answered, and then we'll get to these. I want to give our Marine officer an opportunity to address the law enforcement related issue, because I know he works really hard. He does the best he can. It's alphabet soup there because there is a lot of jurisdictional issues. So if you want to tackle some of the questions or address some of the concerns that were brought up.
As far as the derelict vessel on your property, I'm not familiar with that at this point.
Microphone.
We've gotten rid of a lot of derelict boats during my time as Marine Patrol officer, so I don't remember speaking to you about your specific situation.
Yeah, if we can have, just come to the microphone. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's because I was told that Riviera Beach has no jurisdiction, and I needed to call the county or the Coast Guard. That's why you weren't called.
Okay. Yeah, so like I said, over the years, we've removed quite a few with the help of lagoon keepers.
The lagoon keepers came to my rescue.
Okay.
They helped me out quite a bit, and thank you.
Okay.
So, and it isn't your fault, and that's where I was like, okay, it's
Well, I apologize about that, and we can discuss it further if you like. Okay.
Yeah. So, go ahead.
As far as the issue that was expressed over here with the boat in the backyard, I did address, I did speak to you. I came out to your property, and I mean, that vessel is a little over 300 feet away from the seawall. And I also addressed the other concerns. So, you know, I can't be out there and.
You addressed them, but nothing happened. You said it's not a channel, and they had every right to be in there, but now we.
That's correct.
There is a channel. So.
And they're not in the channel.
Well,
Let me,
well, hold on. But I do want y'all to see that there is situations where, and if you don't have his contact information, he's a great person, especially if you're having those issues. But also, he can only regulate things that are on the books and that he's able to regulate, because at the end of the day, he has to be able to answer for the actions that he takes. And so they get by, hold on. He'll be here all night. There's other questions that we're going to address. So, again, are there other questions that you heard that need to address? If not, we're going to get to the other questions that we have.
I think those are the only two at this point.
Okay. All right. We will wait. Let us get through the questions. Let us get through the questions. Thank you. All right, Mr. Sherman, I know you had some questions that you wrote out again.
The first item is trying to do something north of the bridge and over.
Your microphone's dying. Here you go.
Okay, trying to do something north of the bridge on the west side, and then something over at Sugar Sands to again address the issue of people just moving from one spot to another location.
All right, somebody wants to take that?
Well, I think that what I'm hearing is there ought to be some consideration for potentially expanding the mooring field area to the area Phil Foster to the north and possibly even further south towards the South City limits. And I think that's something that the group could take a look at.
so we did design a mooring field completely in the Phil Foster area. But I want to say it was like 70 boats, something like that. What, was that what it was? Anyway, but we also went considerably west of Phil Foster. We went to the channel right away. But part of what that was is the design circles, which could be increased for each one, which reduces the number of boats. Well, what we want to do is fill the areas with a design channel. So when we go to permitting, the state of Florida says, all right, that channel that you've got in there that goes around to make sure the boat's leaving the boat ramp, coming and going from the private docks on the east side, you know, get too close to Sugar Sands. That's part of the mooring field design. So as part of the permitting, then DEP would approve that channel, and you couldn't anchor in that channel. So that moves all the anchored out boats along with whatever we design for moorings. Now, if we come in there and want to do two and blank all the area over, the agency's going to say, wait a minute, this doesn't look like a mooring field. It looks like you just want to get rid of anchored out boats. So it has to be reasonable. I'm not saying it has to be 120 or even 70. We might get away with 30. You know, but we can run those circles and numbers and whatever to come up with something, hopefully, that would be acceptable to Sugar Sands and the houses on the east side. The county's been quiet about, we haven't heard a peep out of the county as to what they say.
Okay, any additional comments to that question?
So I think what I'm hearing is there's a couple of legal and law enforcement questions out there that need to be addressed by the management company for the marina. You know, what happens to the boats? What legally can you do to the boats outside of the mooring field that are derelict and hanging around? And what legally can we do to relocate them or move them out? So I think that's a good question that needs to be addressed. Increased law enforcement, that's a city issue that we discussed could be improved when you have the mooring field and so forth. A third is a transition plan from the existing illegal moorings that are out there to the new mooring field. I think the question there is legally, what is the responsibility there? And that would need to be addressed in the Marina Management Plan also. And then what's the procedure for new boats? I think that's another legal question. Number one, can there be a preference for city residents? And then how does the lottery system work, or people get onto the list and so forth? I think those are all good questions that have some legal response to them, in addition to recommendations from the Marina Management Company.
Yep. John, take
As far as the charges, if you look at St. Augustine Mooring Field, they actually have a difference between a resident and what they would pay for a mooring versus, you know, just a regular person. And there is a price difference, cheaper for the residents. The only thing I don't know is there's a lot of bottom land in St. Augustine that was part of grants issued by Spain. And it's not state sovereignty submerged bottom land. And therefore, St. Augustine can do things. We actually, with our marina, have a dedication. And there's a lot of rules and regulations of things that we can do at the marina that normal marinas can't do. None of them in Riviera Beach, because of a dedication that was given to the city years ago. The guy got expanded when we expanded the marina.
John, really quick, there was a question in regards to the state law, the statute that got adopted in 2021.
Yeah, actually, it came out of Jacksonville. I can't think of the name of the representative. They were fed up too, but there are some strings attached to it. There's a percentage of area that could go under restrictions, and then you could start getting into whose area is going to get the restrictions and who's not. And so it's a little convoluted, but we may be able to use that. We can take a look at it. Also, as far as existing mooring balls, somebody had the question. According to DEP, they only know of one legal mooring that's in the waters of Palm Beach County. And that was put in by Alec Dreyfus off of Palm Beach. I don't know who owns it now. But according to DEP, there's only one. Otherwise, no different we're going through. If you're going to put a mooring in and install it and not use an anchor and chain, you have to get a permit. And you got to deal with the state of Florida. So according to DEP, I guess all the moorings out there technically are illegal moorings. And of course, when you go to anchor and chain, then you're going to drag, and then you do seagrass damage. So, you know, that argument could be made that the private moorings are a lot better than the anchors, because at least hopefully they won't drag. But there again, how are they, what kind of ropes, how long are they, what's the mooring, no engineering and whatever.
Let's stick to the questions, because I know I want to try to
The
get
next
most.
question is, how do we get rid of, all right, I don't want to move my boat. Well, once we get permitted, and the city council says, yes, we want to do this, and we have an official mooring field that's approved by the state of Florida and the U.S. Army Corps, by state law, you cannot anchor in a mooring field. So when that is declared a mooring field, every boat anchored in there is illegal, and they can be dealt with because state law says you cannot anchor within a mooring field.
Okay.
And that will be an approved mooring field area.
Okay. Other questions?
Community involvement, opportunities for community involvement, and why community wasn't brought in earlier.
This is let me explain to you. We're not driving this. This is the state of Florida that says this is what we want to see in a mooring field. These are the rules. These are the regulations. These are the setbacks. You know, the Corps' got its channels and their rules and regulations. So we tried to design mooring fields that stayed away from the residents the most we could, stay away from the channel right-of-ways as well as the channels, because those are legal setbacks, and design mooring fields that we can operate in, and at the same time reduce the area that anybody could possibly slip an anchor in and anchor in between them. And so that was kind of what I looked at when we tried to do it, and then add the economy of scale. You know, Riviera, 43, we tried to scale it down the best we could, but still bring in the revenue needed to increase law enforcement presence, take care of derelict boats, you know, how the city marina staff and registrations and everything else, the maintenance to make sure that these moorings are inspected, and there's part changes that have to occur every once in a while, but that the moorings get inspected every single year, every mooring, to make sure that there is no wear and tear on them, so they'll survive for the hurricanes where they're intended to be. Did that answer that question?
You wanted to
I think so.
add on to that, or?
I think the only other comment I would have is that, you know, there's a definite trend in communities throughout Florida right now to look at professionally managed mooring fields. We're going to see a lot more of this, and the obvious reasons are there: environmental, the sanitary discharges, and the big one is the derelict boats, and then having a way of keeping them, you know, you can't drive a car on the highway without insurance. So you've got to have that to keep a lot of these things from happening, which I'm hearing a lot of those complaints tonight. So it is definitely a trend in the industry, not only in the state here, but nationwide as well.
Well, and I do want to also speak on the public involvement and public education component. Obviously, this is a session. We've had other sessions. But when you go through these processes, all the legislative actions that have been done are done in a public meeting, are properly noticed, or on the city's website, or what have you. If you haven't had the opportunity to go on the city's website, riverabeach.org, you go to agenda, you look for this particular meeting, and you will see all the this is the entire binder concerning the Mooring Fields discussion that started in 2018. We have no problem having these conversations. Hence, we heard some concerns from the community, and we said, let's facilitate a community discussion. I hope this is not the last discussion, because I think we have some homework to do to come back and have more conversations as to what some solutions are and to answer all your questions. But we want to make sure that whether you agree or disagree, you have all the information to provide us an informed opinion with regards to where the city needs to go concerning this topic. One of the things that also came up, I got an email and I want to have it addressed, is as it relates to the expansion of the marina, the municipal marina, was the mooring field contemplated as mitigation credits or what have you to be able to expand the municipal marina?
We're hoping that we might get some environmental credits that will help us with the expansion of the marina. We won't know about those until we sit down with the agencies, but basically what occurs is they're looking at the amount of seagrass damage on a continual basis. Once we put this mooring field in, which hopefully is going to be there in perpetuity and get replaced every 15 years or 10 years with certain parts, whatever those are, and I understand like the buoys and some's like 5 years, different parts might be 10, and overall the helice and everything else is like 20. That we would get some environmental, because in essence we're creating a conservation area over all of this anchorage, because there will be no seagrass damage done by any boats on mooring whatsoever, and we're going to collect their sewage and we're going to collect their garbage. It goes a long way in perpetuity with that number of boats on a continual basis. And so we're hoping that we will get some environmental credits in the process.
So, question, if this is such an important issue, why doesn't the state assume the leadership or the forward role and say, hey, these are our waters, it's our submerged lands, why don't we just as a state come and say, hey, we're going to regulate it and build them in places that we deem fit? Why would it be something that a local jurisdiction would do versus the state of Florida?
I guess what they do is, you know, we do have a management plan, by the way. If you go to tab 16 in the book, it's in there. I didn't go through all that. I could if you want. I mean,
It's all right, John.
I got all night.
Hold on. Hold on. Guess what? I can have this meeting go as long as we want to go, but just let us get through it. Just let us get to it. We will get to it, okay? Thank you. Go ahead.
I think my quick answer there would be, the state likes to have the have the local community be responsible for its jurisdictional area. And so they like to leave that up to the local level. And the state provides overall guidelines, but they like to see the local unit of government, because you're the ones that are boots on the ground knowing what's going on here.
Okay. All right. Other questions? Any other?
Yeah, no, that is the answer.
Okay.
I mean,
All right. All right. Fine, Mr. Sherman, finance question.
Still have more okay. The marina does run as an enterprise fund. It'll stay within the marina, so the marina will cover those costs as part of the. The costs, keep in mind, we do have the fee to charge to use the mooring field, so that'll be the balancing act. It'll come. Yep, the pump out, the extra boats,
Okay, we've got other questions that I would get. Hold on. But listen, if I don't allow for these questions, I get yelled at for not allowing for your questions. So let me get to everybody's questions. And if you, like I said, when we're done, if you wanted to stay, I don't have a bedtime, neither do they. We'll sit here and go. He will let us. She asked more than one question. I said questions. Allow for other folks to ask the question, and if you'd like for him to come back to it, we can. I want to get to this gentleman's question. He asked questions before. Sir, I'm sorry.
I've only got one question. I'm going to read a comment first. This is from Farm Fish and Wildlife. That the commission approves changes to maintaining high-quality snorkeling and diving opportunities at Blue Heron Bridge. We don't talk about the changes that they made. There is a comment here, and this is what's leading my question. The Blue Heron Bridge area was named one of the 50 best dive sites in the world by PADI Sport Dive magazine, and referred to as Florida's best shore dive by Scuba Diving Maintenance. Were y'all aware of this, and what impact did that have on your mooring field location?
It gives cleaner water in the area that you're talking about, because there isn't any garbage.
I'm asking if you were aware of this.
Yes, of course.
Take that into consideration.
Yeah, we're doing a mooring field to help clean the waters up that feed that same area on an incoming tide.
Can you restate your question?
Yes, again, I feel as if the city of Riviera Beach has failed us. We have one or two Marine, Officer Brown, who's been accommodating. How can you have just two Marine officers for this whole area? That's my one question, and why do we not have more? My second question is, that why we don't have how do you not have pump out boats? We live on an island. We have to go to the marinas and we have to pay to have our head pumped out. Why is this service not out? Listen, I can go on and on of the garbage that's out in my backyard. And
I want to answer your question.
it's on deaf ears. And that's how your residents feel, your constituents.
Question.
So the marinas do provide pump-out services for boats. You've got to go there, but they don't have a pump-out boat because they don't have a mooring field. Normally, your boats wouldn't just arbitrarily pump out anybody out there. That's not, you need a defined mooring field so you can have a plan and then implement that plan.
We've got some other questions. Sir.
Okay, let me just try to restate for the people that are here. The problem they have in the sugar sands to the park area is, I think you're saying, if we don't put in a mooring field, we have no jurisdiction over these boats that are there right now. Okay, because I think I could cite at least 25 or 30 people that were in this room who live on that and look at those boats on a daily basis. Those boats have been there the entire time we have been there for 4 or 5 years and
know these guys have been here for 25 years, same boats out there. They're not replacing each other. They're not coming in and going out. They're just there. So I guess my question to the tip of the spear, the gentleman who's got to approach these boats is, what is the legal ramifications of those when he approaches a boat? Why can't this derelict boat be taken away? Why can't they address that? Is it too long of a legal process? Do we have to have a mooring field for this to occur? I guess is the question I'm asking.
So what's the quickest way to facilitate moving them out if we can?
First of all, it helps with the revenue stream that'll help take care of the additional law enforcement it's going to take care of them. Secondly is, we can actually put them on moorings while we go through the system.
So you're saying there's no money?
The question is, John,
The money is allocated by the state every year to Florida
John,
Inland Navigation District.
The question is immaterial of money. The question is, what can be done from a regulatory standpoint to remove the derelict vessels that are currently in their existing place? Is it the only mechanism to do it is facilitating a mooring field, or can the law enforcement team work with whomever to say and identify this is a derelict vessel, this needs to go away, and how do you facilitate that?
But it's still a process that's got to go through, and that process right now stinks. I mean, lagoon keepers, I don't want to tell you how many sunk boats they've taken out in that area. You said it's never changed, but we can get you that number.
Almost 500 in the last 20 years.
But how long does it take from Jonathan calling and saying, hey, this boat out here, there's nobody's lived out here for 8 months, it's taken on water, what are you going to do?
I think you'll find somewhere around 6 to 8 months in order to get through the process to get that boat sent to the dump. If you have, well, that doesn't say those boats are all derelict.
I'm telling you, 80 to 90% of those boats have been there since I have.
That doesn't make them derelict.
So, hold on.
Because they have the rights of navigation.
I think to answer your question, though, if there's a designated mooring field, you can keep them out a lot easier than you can right now. I think that's the given. And
so,
No, I didn't say 80. I said we can cut it down.
Wait. That.
Yeah.
Cut it down to 80.
All right.
Even if we say legislatively we take it to 60, that's still twice as many boats that are there.
We could probably take it down to 25 and still make it work.
So we've got this whole process, and we'll finish with 25 boats, which is what we have right now.
So.
But they'll be on moorings, and they definitely will not be derelict vessels.
Hold on. All right, so there's no other way. So if the residents all got home today and sent us, or sent whomever, an email that said, these are pictures of all these boats, we believe them to be derelict. How long is it, that process? And then how do you pay to, if we say 10, 5 are considered derelict, how long does that process take to get them out of there? Because that's a good question, is if it's been there for 20 years, there should be 5 boats there, conceivably.
Part of it is that there's a process that we put in the law. We've tried to put stuff in the law every single year. There's one that says, all right, if this boat looks like it might be derelict, there's barnacles above the water line, there's hatches that are open, there's a whole laundry list that we put in the statute. Law enforcement can make them go through a process where they have to prove that boat is capable of navigating from point A to point B in a certain time frame. And if it can't do that, it's derelict by the nature that it can't navigate. And that's one of the ways that we can seize the boat. But I'm just telling you, they check the boat, the owner's not there. Try and find the owner to begin with. And most of the court cases, so when the guy finally goes to court, oh no, I sold it to Joe Blow. I don't own this boat anymore, Your Honor. Case dismissed.
And if I may, I think that the completeness of this meeting was that if this is the case, if this is what it takes to get these boats regulated and out of there, how are you going to do this for this huge area you have centrally?
Because they don't come into the mooring field to begin with. It's like a hotel.
Wait, John, relax.
All right.
Well, but you know, well, and I can tell you that there's, if we look back, if we go back 20, 30 years, obviously you would want this to not be an issue. But you can go to Miami right now, you can go to Boca, Boynton, all the other communities are dealing with this. And so what we want to do is have a strategy that makes sense, that doesn't create for a pain point for the residents, right? There's got to be some solution that we can all conceivably say, hey, maybe it's 10, maybe it's 5, maybe it's, hey, Riviera Beach, why don't you just do 40 throughout and say, show us that you can do it right, and we're okay with it. And then if we see that, hey, it's a benefit, or we're seeing things change, then that's where hopefully we can get the conversation really moving. Sir, I know you had your hand up for a little bit, and then we have a hand, or you too, I'm sorry.
Anyone up there, give us a phone number to call, or tell us who to call when the derelict boats come aboard Sugar Sands' seawall, which is private and posted. And somebody said earlier, we need help. That was not addressed. We need help. We need a phone number to call when somebody invades our space, goes in our backyard. By the time we call the local police, they don't respond, and that's the truth. She's not even here now. They live along that water. I happen to be a member of the board of directors, and they were calling me to get police force to enforce this. Do we call the Marine Police? Do we call the local police? And who's gonna come? And by the time they do come, by the way, the people are gone. They call Uber and have them pick them up on Sugar Sands property. By the time we react, they're gone. We need a phone number or a contact person.
We'll make sure you get his phone number before you leave. Yes, sir.
As a salesman, we spend a lot of time in anchorage zones. Some people just don't get that there are pre-anchorage zones. And the difference between what we have out in back of Sugar Sands is at least 3 boats that have been there several years, but they're for sale. It's a cheap parking spot because it isn't regulated. They're for sale, and it's a lot easier to sell a boat in the water than it is on the dry. So the boat, some of the boats are simply out there as a parking spot to sell, and you can't regulate that.
Yeah.
But you can regulate the demaster ones.
Yeah, there's boats that are abandoned, but there are at least 3 or 4 boats out
If it
there.
doesn't meet the definition of being a derelict boat, then, I can't process it.
And even if it's demasted, if their engine runs, that means it's still capable of navigation, and therefore it doesn't fit the category.
Anna, and then here, and then that's the last question.
I have a few questions, and I think I'm going to pull this project McCoy since he has a tendency when he gets frustrated and he doesn't get the questions answered to do yes, no, I don't know questions, right? So, Mr. Swift, were you not told, or did you not recommend to the board in the navigation district that Lakeview Park, a better good location for a mooring field due to the fact that it's a sandbar, yes or no?
No,
Then I think it's
not true.
It's on record, Mr. Evans. It's on record. He said it, the same way he said that he didn't, that Singer Islanders didn't want it. And we have to sit here and listen, watch it.
Anna, if you can provide me, listen, I want people to get to their question. We can talk afterwards. We can speak, Anna, ask your questions, but other folks, I don't want to have the conversation. Ask a question. If you've said something. Okay, next question. Okay, we'll have a conversation. Next question.
Did you, Mr. Swift, meet with the residents of Lakeview Park?
Pardon?
Did you meet, yes or no, with the residents of Lakeview Park to look at the environmental impact to our community, yes or no?
I'm not sure where you're talking about. I attended city workshop or public on Singer Island. We did several of those, at least two. I haven't been invited to any other groups except,
Okay. Do you have another question? We had, oh, ma'am, I'm sorry. Yes.
I just wondered if you're familiar with the Palm Beach Sheriff's Volunteer Marine Patrol at all?
yes.
And the fact that they are not patrolling as much because they lost their dock space at Phil Foster. They had 2 docks, and I guess they decided they would make more money renting them than letting the volunteers dock there. So they have boats and everything, they're just not here anymore, so they're not patrolling anymore.
Well, we've got problems with FWC with the amount of fuel, you know, with the cost. They're doing less patrol. I mean, we definitely have patrol problems, and not just here. There's a mass amount of water, but unfortunately, this is property. And there's all kinds of property laws and what the police have to go through in order to seize that vessel. And then you got navigational stuff and the right to navigation. It's a very complex problem. Fortunately, when we're able to write some tickets, we've got a new thing now where they can actually turn the vessel over, and we're going to be able to take it and pay to have it funded and taken care of, removed, and then all that goes away because we don't have court hearings, we don't have.
I'm just saying that you have
Yeah.
qualified marine patrol, but they don't have
The space. We'll see if there's anything maybe at our marina. This was the last question. I stated that earlier.
Yes, but it's not like you just take, oh, I want this piece of water and this, it's Representative Dugan.
Well, when we convene again, we'll have an answer for that. On face value, until we do the research and see how that works. But yeah, we will do the research. I already said last question. Yes, I'll make sure you get. For those of you that stuck it out, certainly I appreciate it. Thank you for coming. If you want to talk to any of us at the conclusion of the meeting, we'll hang around as long as necessary. And then if there's any questions that you do have with regards to this particular item, please don't hesitate to email citymanager@rivierbeach.org, and we'll make sure that somebody furnishes you a response or the answers to the questions you have. Thank you, everybody. Good night.